Yeah, so you're not urgent but important are the things that you want to try to prioritize and list and schedule and build into a routine so that you don't end up in the 10% time. What? We have those kind of things? All right, so you can keep discussing with each other at the breaks and that kind of thing on this one. So we're going to move on. Learning self-management is, we got two goals. It needs to be the person-driven. We each need to be motivated to do things. And ladies, it's not just because it's right, okay? It is because it's right, but it's not just because of that, because God is the one who instituted the crowns in the Bible. He wanted us to be motivated by things that he's built into us to be motivated by. So there's 5 different ways we can get, and you can do this with your kids and find out what the different ways that God rewards us. He's built their reward system into Scripture. It's not bribery. Bribery is when you're rewarded for something that you've done evil. That's bribery. But you can be legitimately rewarded for things that you've done right. And God is the one who instituted that in the Word of God. So we want us and our children to be motivated by internal things, intrinsically motivated to do the next thing. You don't need to be as actively engaged externally saying, you need to do, if you've taught your children some things that they can do to start managing their own self. So that's this part, okay? We want the young person to own it. And I've got some charts here. I don't think I've got enough for everybody. And again, I'm just going to leave this notepad here, and you can send me your email, and I'll try to send you copies if we run out. Oh, there's a beeper again.
So you say you're going to teach us, like my teenager, maybe 3 years ago would have been internally motivated, and now he's just like, Mom, I'll do it later. You're fine. Chill out. Like.
Okay, so this is where, this book right here, part of this book, I don't know what my other copies are, I had a few left over, but it's the Young Peacemaker for younger people, and then there's a teen version that I forgot to bring, and then there's the adult version. He talks about emotional intelligence and knowing yourself before God, knowing yourself, how you relate to other people, and then knowing how you're relating to yourself. And part of that set of steps is understanding that choices have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So he can do the, hey, Mom, chill, and I'll do it later thing. Are you ever able to get to the place, or has he gotten to the place yet, where something he's chosen to do later, he's ended up regretting and paid for it?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. He's, yeah, like.
So he's
lucky he's
not
homeschooled
understanding.
Because
yeah.
he has the talk, like, he's like, oh, I don't want to do it now, I'll do it later. I'm like, okay, buddy, but like, if you don't get it done, like, I have to leave at 3. If you don't get this done by 3, then this is going to be the consequence. And he'll get it done, but, like,
It's a battle.
It's a little bit more of a battle than I would like.
Right.
And I'm also probably not the best at following through with harsh.
Okay, well, this is like a whole different session on finding out motivation and stuff like that. I'm sorry, I did a whole class for like 16 hours on behavior management and that kind of stuff. This is only one out of it, but there are things you can, like, you have to find out what motivates them, and then use that as your motivator and your consequence, and things that they'll lose out because they really want something else. And then, yeah, implementing. But also getting to a point where they, and that's, I'm talking about that over here. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let each test his own work, then he'll have reason to boast in himself. Have we considered that the Word of God has actually said we gain, and this is obviously not earning salvation, but we gain joy and pleasure when we've done something and we've done it right. And you want your kids to get to the point where you've done it right. So you get the reward that you've chosen to give yourself. So we use 3 terms interchangeably: self-control, self-regulation, self-management. We'll use SM for short. Because I don't get into all the psychology type of stuff, other than I've just used the term because it makes it a little easier, but it's definitely biblically based. You're presenting your body as a sacrifice. 1 Corinthians 9. We run so that we might obtain. We do self-discipline. And I always put the entire verse in there because I don't want to assume somebody's going to look it up later. I want you to see that God says, we do things because we want to gain things that are incorruptible later. And 1 Corinthians 10:31, have you really ever thought your way through that verse? Whether therefore you eat this scone, or drink the coffee or tea or water that you just drank, whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. I mean, God totally boiled it down to just that. We have to do this to survive, eat and drink. It's that important to God that everything we do is glorify Him. Okay, so definition of self-management, personal systematic application of behavior changes and strategies that result in desired modification of your own behavior. Now, that's the secular definition, but we know again from Romans 12:1 and 2, you change your mind. Oh, I forgot to mention this. In Romans 12:2, where it says, and be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that word transformed means, does anybody know what it means? Metamorphosis. Like a caterpillar changing into a butterfly. And have you ever had your kids watch the process of a caterpillar trying to come out of the cocoon? It's excruciating to watch, because and everything inside, he wants to take that, open it for them, right? But it's this crazy process. Right? Are we ever willing, personally, and then working with our kids, to go through that process of mentally changing the way we think about things? I mean, God's put me through it. So I've had to learn it, but it's a systematic change of thinking, and it's changed by the renewing of our mind, obviously, in biblical things. It can be simple and deal with simple behaviors, like taking a note in the bathroom mirror to remind yourself to go take the garbage out or something like that. Typically, it's more complex when you're working with your kids or in instructional settings. Am I going too fast for the people who are filling in? If I am, you can, I'll let you look at the other cheat sheet out. So advantages, I'm just listing the advantages and then we'll develop them a little bit more here. Helps a young person deal with behaviors that go unnoticed by a parent. It helps them deal with behaviors that are unobserved. It helps promote generalization. It helps allow more efficient home learning. It advances a young person toward the ultimate goal of educational independence that transfers to life independence. That's our goal of teaching self-management. Children who learn chores and work hard are more happy and successful than those who are spoon-fed, so to speak. And that was a research study that I've seen recently. It's popped up in one of my education feeds. They've actually done research to show that these kids that are just sitting twiddling and not doing are way less happy than the kids on farms or at home and doing productive. They're way more successful and happy in life because they've been taught how to work and manage and do. Okay, so now let's break that down a little bit more. So then helping a teen deal with behaviors that go unnoticed by the parent, but could possibly be observed by the parent. So the teen's not necessarily noticing. Like, we've done this whole attention thing on purpose. I have no way of knowing what's going on in your brain at every time when that thing goes off, right? You guys know what's going on in your brain. I don't. But I might go, he looks like he's zoned out, he's not paying attention. I can say, you're not paying attention. Like, yeah, I'm just, but like you sort of notice, but you can't totally. Didn't go forward. You pick your battles. There are too many behaviors being embedded in a home for a parent to be able to observe and implement techniques on every single thing. You can't frustrate your kid, you can't frustrate yourself trying to fix everything at once. So you have to pick your main big one and do them one at a time. It includes things like accuracy on their work or legibility. Things like legibility, like guys especially, they could care less, they want to just scribble it down, most of them, although I've known some guys who are incredibly articulate. What's the point of legibility?
Understand?
Thought across what you're trying to
Right,
say.
so somebody else can actually understand what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be perfectly legible like the nice little cursive script thing, because mine's never been that way. My sister literally can do calligraphy as fast as I can write normally. So I just didn't even try. It just wasn't even a competition for me to look that gorgeous at writing. But yeah, the point is to be able to write enough so that other people understand what you're trying to communicate. Your attitude towards yourself, your task, your seat posture. And you know, there really is something to be said for seat posture. Sometimes kids need to squirm and do more, but if you're sitting slouched, it actually changes the dynamics of what's happening with you physically, and you can't attend more. So then number 2, helps a young person deal with behaviors that are unobservable by the parent. Like this one. I think that's the last one I said. Unobservable, like their thoughts, their self-doubt, their obsessions, their depression, their melancholy. So sometimes it helps a kid be able to work on something like this, or you. Your sense of self-dignity. One of the things in Romans 12, 1 and 2, we always quote those two, right? And how many times have you heard, nobody should think more highly of themselves than they ought to think? Okay, that's absolutely true. But how many people actually finish off that verse? But to think soberly, according as God has given to us the measure of faith. And then the entire rest of the chapter is about spiritual gifts. So we're not supposed to go, I'm the best person around here. But we are supposed to go, you know what? God has gifted me to teach. And therefore, I have the responsibility to try to give to other people what I have learned. That's thinking soberly about the gifts that God has given you and teaching your kids the difference between, I'm the greatest there is, and, well, actually, no, God has given me this ability, and I want to humbly use it how I possibly can. Educational implications, the education, if a kid, and I don't know, I'm sure somebody in here has a child who's, I can't do this, I can never make this so hard, it's too hard. You never heard that? No, I've heard that. Or even sometimes you feel that way as a parent, right? But if you're feeling that way, can you approach an educational task? No, not necessarily, right?
Not at all.
And you don't know what's happening if it's in their head. So you're trying to help them realize, and then empowering them to realize, oh, actually, I do have abilities, I do have gifts God has given me. And again, thinking about the internal skills that I already referenced, what I can do and what God has given me the ability. Did I do that too fast? For those, okay. So generalization, have you heard this term before? What means by generalization is, right now we're sitting here doing this, but I want you to be able to go home and actually do something with it at your home. So you might be able to write something down on this piece of paper, but can you take it and do something at home with it? So for example, over time, they can do the same thing from 1 week to the next. Or they can do it across settings. So they know how to clean the kitchen and put the garbage in the kitchen. But what about their bedroom? Did I just say that? Can they clean their bedroom and put the trash in them? That's generalizing. You've taught them how to do it here, can they do it over here? And then it spreads across to other related behaviors. So I'll give you a couple examples of that. Am I going too fast? Making sense?
Yes.
Okay. So spelling. You need spelling for written expression. That's why you need to spell right. I had kids when I was working in Greenville County, and like, I don't care how to spell this stuff. But then they wanted to later on when they had to go to the free time, because you have to develop their skills related to what they're interested in. When they wanted to type in motocross skiing and they couldn't spell motocross right, they couldn't pull it up. So then all of a sudden spelling became very, very important. Oh, I got to spell this right to get it to pull up. So, yeah. Math, obviously, is in physics, chemistry, biology labs, music. If you've got any of your kids doing music, it's very mathematical. So it spreads to other things. And then life skills, different life skills. So examples of generalizing. You can plan a trip to the mall, or the beach, or vacation, and there's a whole bunch of things that once you teach them these particular skills, they can apply them in all those settings. So I had a munchkin in Greenville County who, the very first time the nurse came in to do dental stuff, they would take them down and give a toothbrush and do the dental cleaning, whatever. He freaked out and crawled under his desk. Ah, what are you doing to me? And I said, well, just try it and see how it goes. And so when he came back, he was like, I got a toothbrush and this was so cool. So then the next time something changed in his schedule, I could say, hey, remember what happened with the toothbrush thing? Wasn't that fun? Yeah, this might be fun too, so you don't have to fear it as much. He come from a terrible situation. But those are all the things that you think through. It allows you to be more efficient when you teach your kids to take care of some of these things. I have this one parent I'm trying to work with, and I keep telling her, if you would teach your children how to put the dishes in the dishwasher or sweep the floor, then you wouldn't feel like you have to constantly do all this and, monitor them, expect them to do. It allows for a bit more efficient home teaching. Parent assumes the primary responsibility of overall management of behavior. And then you have to determine with your children what age you can start transferring some. Some kids can start transferring responsibility pretty young. Other kids need a little bit more time, or if they've got disabilities, then you have to do a little bit more judgment, right? Choosing and delivering reinforcers and consequences. So this is where you'd be in that role of, especially if you're a parent and they've done the several activities that you've asked them to do, you're the one who's going to say, okay, yeah, now I can take you to the beach or the lake or whatever you're going to do as far as what they want for their thing. And then you start implementing the self-management plan, you kind of teach them how to do it, and then you try to turn them loose to start working. And then you evaluate their behavior and how they're doing it. So you kind of follow up and keep track of it once you're teaching them how to do this. So even a child doesn't know what he's doing, whether it's pure or not. Okay, so this is an example. Read this for a minute and tell me how you react to it. Because some people go, and some people go, that makes sense. And this is not a homeschooling example, but it is an example for us to think about for a second, how you react to this.
I guess the good would be the time savings.
Okay, so the teacher's time is saved, but what's the
The
hesitation?
students can focus
Taking
on other
responsibility.
The students could do it, yeah, the students could possibly do another activity too. Yeah, let's say that again.
The children taking responsibility.
Okay, yeah, they're taking some
Correct,
responsibility.
I think when the child sees their own mistake, it would be different than somebody else pointing out the mistake to them.
Okay.
Integrity. You need to have integrity to grade themselves.
Okay, so that's one concern that people come up with. What if they're going to just mark them right anyway?
Or leave it blank, and then when you're like, oh, the right answer is B,
Right. Right.
just circle B. If you're doing your own test or doing a friend's.
Now, at this point, with your kids, you could do things like, okay, when you're doing your work, it's in blue pen. But when it's check time, it's green pen. And they have to check everything with green pen, and they can't have the blue pen anywhere near them. So then sometimes you can catch them trying to. And if they do fill in the right answer, like the question becomes, tell me how that helped you later in life. You didn't know this now. If you get into a situation where you still don't know, how's that going to help you? And get that conversation going, especially, you can do this even with like 9 and 10-year-olds, because I've done that with some things where I've had the younger, but yeah, that's the concern sometimes with the integrity. Okay? So adulting is the goal, we want them to be mature. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. When I became a man, I feel like childish things. It includes a combination of all of these, so I'm going to put them up here real quick. And one of the things that we've done is the self-monitoring and self-recording. This whole time, I've had you do that little check mark. That was an example of that whole self-monitor, self-report. So you can ask yourself, how did I do with paying attention when Ruth was talking to me? And the other thing that happens with those little distractions that we think is just a second, it actually, you lose at least sometimes anywhere between 20 seconds and 2 minutes when something happens as a distraction. So that's how much is lost in instructional time when a text goes off in class or something like that. Think about if you're driving and you lose attention for 2 minutes while you're driving, an awful lot of horrible things can happen in 2 minutes. So self-observation is you're watching yourself, how am I paying attention, those kind of things. Self-cueing is, oh man, I wasn't paying attention because that little beeper went off and I went, oh, did any of you go, oh man, I wasn't paying attention, I need to switch back and pay attention to Ruth. You may have, depends on what they're doing activity-wise. Because like this morning, for instance, with me, I was like, I got to get out the door. And I had the phone sitting there, and I was going to pick it up and check something else. Nope, I'm not touching that, because invariably, somebody texts something when you least want to get distracted by that. So my self-cue was, put it away. You're not touching it right now until you go out the door. And then self-reinforcement, that's things where you're choosing, and I didn't bring charts. I have a whole set of charts of things where the student can choose to something that they might enjoy doing for doing the task that you've got them doing. So there's 3 steps. You teach them the self-recording, which I did with your little check mark thing. And then you do the self-evaluation where you sit down. You guys can kind of do this maybe some in your spare time here. And then the self-reinforcement is, ha, I paid attention the whole time and I was never distracted the whole time Ruth was talking. That would be a miracle. Or self-reinforcement for your kids might be 10 to 15 minutes one-on-one time with mom. Like sometimes they want that, like figure out what their gifts are, their things that really reinforce them. You provide a rationale. So I think I was afraid I might run out of time because that's usually what happens with these. So I've given, I think both sets of these have this whole thing explained. But what I did was I got this, and I don't know how many I have. So I've got the sort of more elementary version, and you can be even more simple with your elementary version. But you can do little self-contracting with your kids. So maybe pick one or the other of these if you've got a teen or a young person. And this gives you an idea of a checklist thing. The other thing I've got here is a daily prep check chart where if you've got a kid who's struggling, and I can talk you through afterwards how to do this, but I actually taught my students fraction skills in the process of doing this, where the first one is, when you showed up on Monday, did you have your paper and pencil? Did you have your planner or calendar? I don't know if you guys have planners or calendars that you get your kids to do every day. Did you have your binder or your notebook? How much time did you need to do the work? How much time did you spend being distracted? How much time did you lose? And then like fractions of time. I've created different things in here, but then across here I taught them how to do the fraction, decimal, and percent of their time and how they were doing it. So that was another idea I came up with my kids because they were struggling with the concept of this was a concept, an example of generalization, where it went from, okay, I'm learning to self-monitor myself, make sure I got my pencil, paper, and that kind of thing, but also I could generalize it over to math and show them the percentages and how it actually works in the real world when they are in tasks. So that's an idea there.
Word problems.
This is another one that I came up with for like an older kid, where it's the whole day scheduled. And what did they do during the day, and you can put different things and slot across the top to keep track of. So if you want to take one of those or look at one of those, you can. I think, yeah, time always gets away from me and I always have too much information.
That's all right. We have a whole hour for lunch. We're good. That's why we're here.
Just double checking here.
Part of the self-monitoring, you find, a pastor had a conversation with us in our parenting class, ignoring distractions.
Right.
So, which I'm trying hard to do. I have ADHD and a 6-year-old, and so he's like, one's popping up and like one's looking at the birds, and so like building that skill of, yes, a phone might be going off, ignore it. Yes, your brother might be whistling, try to ignore it, like.
Right, right. Now, if brother is whistling when people are trying to work, that might be one of those things where brother needs to sit in a different room.
Yes.
Yeah, I see.
Because if he absolutely has to whistle to do, then it's not fair that he's distracting the other kids.
Yeah.
But something like a phone going off, choosing to, that's teaching them the difference between selective attention and sustained attention, where you're going, okay, that just blew you for a second, make him come back.
Mm-hmm.
Try to keep coming back. And yeah, it's hard. Like you can eliminate all the distractions, but then that's not teaching them how to handle distractions either. So sometimes you have to eliminate it and then slowly bring them back in until they get to the point where they can ignore
The
something.
two that I have to kind of hands-on the most with, one's a hummer.
Oh, okay.
And so he does this like humming, whistling thing,
Right.
and it's almost like a self-seek thing. Like he just
Right.
like, and Jack, Emerson, you stop that. And then, so it happens enough that I'm trying to teach Jack that Emerson does this all the time. And you both need mom to help you. So I can't necessarily have them in separate rooms.
Right.
So sometimes I'm like, okay, Emerson, if you need to stop. And then sometimes I'm trying, like it's a fine line. It's hard to find that line between getting one to stop an almost unconscious behavior to get the other one to be like, dude, things annoy you and you have to learn to just ignore it.
Right. Right. And it does, yeah, and that's one of those, this is where in situation, I'll just use you as the example, okay, this is the generalizing, right? We've gone to stuff, now we'll go to, in your situation, I would take the one who's really struggling with the constant noise and come up with some kind of a positive thing where he gets to track how many times he ignored his brother, and then he gets something special from you that he wants.
Okay.
That's just an idea.
Yeah.
Like, these are ideas that just pop into my head as I'm going, but yeah, because then that teaches him, dude, lady, I got this, ha, you know? And that's, I mean, that's the way you guys write work, right? It's the competition thing, it's like, you made all that noise, but I ignored you, and I got this instead. But, no, they did, kids will do, you can sort of play off of that a little bit, but at the same time, it's teaching him.
Yeah.
That, as far as that one too, I've tried this at our house with a little bit of success. Is like offering instead of just sound blocking headphones. Because I have like one child who cannot focus with noise around, and in any room there's going to be other noise.
Right.
Yeah, I have those too.
Yeah, highly
So,
sensitive,
you know,
yeah.
If you think like, if this was an adult, what accommodations would they, in most of the many jobs you could accommodate, you know, plugging your ears. as long as it
So,
was a
plain
safe
headphones that
situation.
are not attached to anything.
Right, no, just
But
like,
never the earbuds.
just sound blocking.
Yeah. You do know that those earbuds are literally sending electric signals through your brain the whole time you're listening to something with the earbud. Like, just scary what that's doing to your brain.
Right. No, I meant like,
But no,
you're
headphones,
just, you're
yes.
running a
Yeah.
chainsaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of a.
Yeah, see, this is what I love about these kind of sessions. You're sitting talking and yeah, that'll give me something, yeah, so you
I
swap
do that
ideas,
too, because
that's
my kid
awesome.
can't stand the sound of paper. If it touches paper, he freaks
She
out.
didn't love to wear them, but it was like, here they are for you, if you need them, you can do it. But you can't hold the whole house hostage
Yeah.
while you have to focus, because we all have to be silent.
Right,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I was doing an observation on a kid at one point, and he said, what's that sound? And the teacher said there was no sound, but because I'm extremely sensitive to sound too, I was like, I didn't say anything to the teacher, but I thought, oh yeah, he heard the heater kick on. And that's exactly what the sound was, that kicked off. He didn't know what it was, but he, yeah. Cops, have you guys seen this one before? And this is just another example of a capitalization when they're doing the writing. So they do the writing and then they come back and be cop of their writing. So capitalization, skip the O at the beginning, just look for capitalization, punctuation, and spelling. And then once they've done that, come back and see if their thoughts are organized, and then what's the overall appearance. So that's just an example of mnemonic strategy, another self-monitoring kind of thing. Yeah, the goal is to increase their behavior. So I set the clock thing for you. So anybody willing to be honest? How many times? So anybody not paying attention to me once? Okay, twice?
Not when the alarm went off, but other times.
Okay, well, that's a good point. That's a good point, because it's made you aware that, okay, maybe not when the alarm was going off, but I did have times, and then you ask yourself, or you teach your child, okay, so why did I go off? Was it something important? Or was it something that I could have, maybe I needed to write a note for something that I thought about right that second? So you write the note and then you can focus back on your task, or just some different ideas like that. And that's where the self-questions, was I paying attention? How was I paying attention? What was happening? Those kind of things. And you're teaching your child to do that. And then I think on both sheets I've got this whole set of things. The one other thing I wanted to talk about was, ask them to define attention. When you say listen to me, have you taken the time to specifically explain to your child what listen means?
I'm so sorry. Well, something.
So don't say listen to me, I say, can you, tell me what I'm trying to tell you, type of thing.
Okay, so you don't say listen, okay? That's
Okay,
good.
no,
That's good.
because my oldest is ADHD, so a lot of the time he doesn't seem like the behavior is that he's not listening.
Right.
But he can tell me exactly what I said and what I was trying to say, so a lot of time I don't ask him if he's listening. I was like, okay, what's mom telling you?
Right.
Do you comprehend, tell back to me what I said to you
Okay.
in your own words.
So have you guys taken the time to define to your kids what listen does? Yeah.
I try and teach, especially my 9-year-old, because he's just like, oh yeah, I'm listening, but you can't tell. And I try and tell him, you need to show me that you're paying attention, with your body too, not just, your ears. Because he can just be doing this and that, and then another time I'll say, I told you, and he's like, I didn't hear you. I said, well, try and use, like, show me that you're paying attention, not just
Right. It
me
can't be
talking and him
yeah.
busy doing all the things.
It can be show me, but a good definition for listen is, have you heard enough of what I've said so that you can do something with what I've said? So kind of like what she said. So when you get your child to listen or those kind of things, tell me what I just said. And so maybe with him, you need to say, okay, stop for a second, tell me what I just said. And when they actually have to auditorily answer you back, then they have to think about it, but and tell you back, then they tend to hold it better.
Then I find if they're missing a part of it,
Right.
like especially instructions, he'll get like 1, 2, 4, and 6. And so I'll be like, okay, bud, I need you to do this, 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 and this, and this, and like, tell me what I just said. And he'll be like, okay, you told me this, this, this. I'm like, all right, I also said this and this, okay, tell me what you said. Like, I just want to get him to like verbally say back to me what I said.
I find it helpful too to say
Cement
like,
it a little
there's
bit.
3 things, and I get him like a keyword for each of the 3. Like
Okay.
he has to remember those 3 things
Okay.
before, you know, whatever it
Some
is to
children with
say.
disabilities, actually can't handle 3. They can only handle 1 or 2, or get them to write it down. So yeah, but if he can handle
This
3,
is
that's
not a
awesome.
disability, this
Okay.
is just a little boy growing up.
That's good, but yeah, learning to make that distinction and know, okay, this is this or this, but
Right.
I'm throwing that out there for people. If you've got a child that seems to just never remember, it may very well be that they just can't hold attention. Like me, I'm not auditory. I have to see it in a list. Even when I was a teenager, my mother would stand there and say, okay, I need you to get milk and eggs and da-da-da-da at the grocery store. And I'm, Mom, I can't do it. You have to hand me the piece of paper, let me visually look at it, and then I could get everything that you needed. So just paying attention to your kids.
Yeah, I'm like that too.
Okay. Yeah, so the other thing on the accuracy, we kind of talked about the accuracy piece. If your child's not improving, because they're supposedly doing their little accurate thing, and they're trying to keep track of it, they're not really being accurate, but there's no improvement in behavior, then you have that conversation. You sit down and you go, okay, you're saying this, but there's no improvement in behavior. So are you being honest with yourself? Because it has to start there. If you're not even willing to be honest with yourself, you're not going to be honest with anybody else, and you're not going to get anywhere in life. So you have to have that conversation on the accuracy piece of what we're doing with yourself. Okay? And I got to stop. All righty?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are you sticking around for a while, or do you have to head back?